Welcome to Dad Bods, Crab Cakes, and Sports, where husky middle-aged men share insight on the latest Baltimore sports news. From the bank to the yard and beyond, we're breaking down the Ravens, Orioles, Terps, and more. Baltimore's best sports podcast starts now. Good evening, fellas. Jason Weisbecker with Mike Frisky and John Lanscraner. Boys, how's it going?
Hola.
Good.
Man of many words. Fabulous.
Spanish words, too.
Oh, my goodness. El good, Mike. El good.
That's Spanish for the good, right?
Correct. Well done.
All right, good.
Or he good, depending on where you put the accent mark.
Oh, gosh. Well, based on last week's cussing, I wrote our show sheet tonight, and I started off with shoot the poop. So instead of,
I thought that was tame. Yeah, that was good.
Oh, Lordy. Well, I mean, I guess I can't. I thought we'd start off by just reviewing the Orioles game, thinking it was something very exciting. But correct me if I'm wrong. It was a 3-0 shutout by Garrett Crochet and the gang. Is that correct?
Yep. It was. I mean, it was only a little over 2 hours and 20 minutes or so. It's pretty quick game. It was done by before 9 o'clock, wasn't it?
Oh man.
Yeah, my daughter was out at church youth group, and I was excited because tonight was the first night. Like I was going to sit down. I got Fubo again. I was going to watch the game with my son, and we both fell asleep in the ninth inning, like trying to watch the Orioles fail to come back. Like it wasn't even really particularly close to a comeback at any point in time. He just was he was in cruise control. I know you like cruises, so you know all about that, John, but cruise control for Garrett Crochet tonight. And even though we had that really highly touted right-hand lineup against the lefty pitcher, it didn't do very much tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, it's funny. It's the newly very rich Garrett Crochet, actually. Holy baseball extensions today. What the hell? Like the last 24 to 48 hours. Crochet signed, what was it, a 6-year, $170 million deal. I hate to say it, but that's kind of a steal. I mean, if he's what I think he's going to be, 6 years is your commitment to him for $170 million compared to what Max Fried with questionable arm issues is. Mike, I mean, that's a hell of a deal if that pans out.
I'm not that good at math, but it seems like it's a lot less money. And I saw him pitch tonight, and I haven't seen him pitch, too often, but I saw him tonight, and his stuff was fantastic. Like he's definitely got front end starter stuff. And if that young Boston core stays together for a while, he could be the anchor for that staff. So kudos to the Red Sox for taking care of their best young arm and extending him. I'm sure that you guys are thinking the same thing. It's like, when are these Orioles going to extend their best young players? But it's that whole Scott Boras deal. And I'd love to see them make a commitment to somebody long-term.
Yeah. I mean, the Red Sox didn't really stop there. They also, and Christian Campbell, their rookie, I guess, middle infielder / outfielder, can play any of those positions for 8 years, $60 million deal, which again is extremely cheap. But just to kind of touch on what you said, Mike, about tying up these players on the Orioles, I do think that they had all the intentions of possibly doing it with a couple of the guys. The problem being, like you said, the Boris guys, there's 3 of them, right? Gunnar, Westberg, and Jackson Holiday. And I don't think they're ready to tie up Jackson Holiday just yet. Like, just knowing the way that they do business, I think that's the one they might wait on a little bit. But the one that I thought they would do, and I think I mentioned this previously, was Colton Cowser. But with this wrist injury thing, they don't have a reason to do it. So I don't know I don't see an arm that they really would tie up just yet. I mean, Grayson, I think they would love to look into, but They don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what Bradish is going to be able to bounce back to. He would be the one that I would be most apt to want to tie up. I mean, John, these just the way that the cookie crumbles to me. I mean, Calger would have been the best one, at least in my eyes, to tie up because he's not a Boris agent, and I mean he had a pretty resounding year as a rookie last year.
Yeah, I think that would have been my one on my top of my list, because you look at what, obviously there's no salary cap in baseball, so you're not worried about that, but spending the money now rather than 3-4 years down the road is actually going to save you money in the long run, but I was looking at this contract and I'm thinking, man, with Christian Campbell, they just got a freaking steal because they're only, they're paying him $60 million over 8 years through 2034. And if this guy pans out to what the scouts and things are saying about him, he could be making, $200-300 million in a 8-year contract. But I don't know if the Orioles are gonna be even open to doing something like this with any of their guys. And like you said, the whole Boris situation just makes things bad and worse, than what they potentially could have been. But yeah, I don't think Holiday hasn't shown me enough to warrant any extension or anything like that as of right now.
I think it's more one of those things where you don't have to do it. Like, I know everybody wants to just tie up these young guys, but like, are you sure? Like the Braves, if you guys remember, the Braves tied up a whole bunch of their young talent a couple years back. I say couple, but like 10 or so years back. And some of those did not pan out. Like they took a chance, swung on a couple, it didn't work. Now others did. I think they tied up Freddie Freeman right away. They, Dansby Swanson, I think, got a decent contract the first time around. Guys like that, but it didn't. Who's the other guy? Hayward. I think
Jason
they tied
Hayward.
up
Back in the day, yeah. I think they did back in the day.
But some of those guys, I mean, those contracts didn't age well in certain areas. And I think they're playing this analytical game. I don't know how aggressive they want to be on that, Mike. But the Red Sox started this last year. They tied up Sedona Rafaela last year. So they have their potential middle infield / outfield for the next 7-8 years.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think of the guys I'd like to tie up. We keep talking about tying these people up. By the way, we're talking about giving them a contract extension. We aren't serial killers or anything like that. I just want to let everybody know. But as far as that's concerned, I'm just saying Gunnar Henderson is the cornerstone for the Orioles for the future. Like he is an MVP candidate. He's proven that. There's nobody like Gunnar in our organization right now. Like the key is the guy that if you could get that contract done, I would do it now. Adley, I think, is great, but Basayo is waiting in the wings. So if there's someone that you're going to eventually maybe let walk, it might be him. You've seen some of the models that the Rays and some of those guys have used where they trade some of those guys like that with like a year or two left and get something back for them. So I don't know that we'll sign everybody, Jason, like you're saying, but I think we should pick one. I don't think our Orioles have given a long-term commitment really to anybody except Tyler O'Neill. And I'd like to see them reward some of these guys that they drafted and make sure that they get taken care of. I think you saw today too, was it Jackson Merrill got a deal? Maybe you have the numbers on that, Jason.
Yeah, so Jackson Merrill signed with the Padres an extension for 9 years, $135 million. I mean, look, if that would get Gunnar done, oh my God, I think they would write that check so fast. But they're not dumb. They know that contract for $135 million is going to be almost 3 times that for Gunnar Henderson. Like we're looking a little south of Soto, is if we're being realistic here. And I don't know what will happen at that time that they do that. I mean, for that. I don't know the mindset. I mean, I know the mindset of the Orioles, how they work, but it just doesn't. That's not like an Oriole move right now. Not with these guys. I unfortunately do think that they operate at a lower pay cost to kind of prove that, hey, look, we do know better than most. And that's okay to an extent. But I'll be honest with you, like those teams that Mike mentioned, like the operating like the Rays and doing those different things, how many World Series have the Rays won? Because I have my sights set a lot higher than that. So, John, if I want to operate like the Rays do, and ironically enough, the guy that's in charge of the Rays, like the behind the scenes VP, or pardon me, of the Dodgers VP and general manager came from the Rays. So it's like you give this guy that is very smart all this money, and look what he can do. You know?
Yeah, I just don't see, that being very successful because, like unlike in other sports where you're like, again, I'll say it again, you're running against a salary cap, you're making moves, to get draft picks, to do other things. In baseball, you don't have to do those sorts of things. Baseball is, okay, who's got the most cash to spend to bring in the best high quality players in free agency, or who has the most cash to keep their players. Another deal that just got announced was Marte with the Diamondbacks just reached a 6-year extension worth $116.5 million. They're an all-star second baseman. So, as I'm seeing some of these numbers coming in, all I'm seeing is, what Gunner's numbers going up, Holiday's numbers going up, assuming, what we think is going to happen is going to happen. But, we're going to have to see what Rubenstein's going to do. Is he going to shell the money out, or is he going to be like Angelos and shell it out once in a while to a guy like Chris Davis who, for lack of a better term, strikes out every time? He's a whiff king.
Well, I do think that looking at some of these numbers, the 135 for Merrill, the 116.5 for Marte, those are somewhere in there. I could see that being a Westberg number, because if he makes another All-Star team or is on his way to doing so, I mean, I'd take that as a steal as well. 7-8 years at that price. He's, in my eyes, he's Gunnar Henderson light. He's got elite sprint speed. He doesn't quite hit the ball out like Gunnar does, but he'll make you pay 25, 30 times a year. Probably somewhere between 80 and 100 RBIs, depending on where he bats in the lineup. I mean, that's a solid Major League Baseball player. And that's what all Major League Baseball players cost, by the way. They above average All-Star baseball players cost $116.5 million. So, Mike, I mean, if it's me, I don't know if you can break the mold. I mean, I know that Boris has had extensions before. It's just not a thing that he's really adamant about. So if maybe they can break the mold and throw something out, I know it's not going to be Gunnar, but maybe it could be Westberg. But to me, getting the ball rolling on one of these guys, I mean, it also helps your fan base. It does tell your fan base a lot. So if it's me, Mike, I'd go for it. Give me the checkbook. I'll write the check.
Well, I wish you had the checkbook then. I just disagree fundamentally with the philosophy that you can do that over and over again, because you have to tie up your best players. Like John was saying, there is no salary cap. It's not like in football where you're operating under a specific guideline. Every team's on a level playing field. It's just not that way. You have to spend money in Major League Baseball to win. You have to. There are anomalies, absolutely. You might get a core of young players who happen to be on, first, second, third year contracts that do something really, really great. But you're never going to see sustained success unless you sign some of those players, at least your centerpiece players. I agree that you can't sign everybody, but you should pick the players. And to me, like, why wouldn't you pick the best players to sign long-term if you're going to pick them? So to me, Gunnar is the guy. If you're going to sign someone long-term, sign Gunnar. Westberg is great. I think he's all you and I both think he's awesome. But if I had to pick between the two of them to have for the next 10 years, I'm picking Gunnar 10 times out of 10. So if you're going to pick somebody, sign the best player, shell out all the money for that guy, and then play money ball around them if you're going to do that. But I want to see some commitment to really good players staying here in Baltimore. And then you have a face of the franchise. You have someone you can market. You have someone that you can make fans excited about. And you have somebody that Josh could buy a jersey, and I don't have to worry about wasting money because he's not going to be here in 3 years.
Yeah,
well, I was gonna say, sorry, Jason. The thing that is the Orioles have on their side is all of their young talent is all position players. They're not worried about signing, a guy like a Paul Skeens or something and having to worry about, okay, when is his UCL going to tear and when is he going to have Tommy John surgery? All they got to worry about is cows are doing dumb stuff like diving into first base and breaking his hand. So I think they're in a little bit better position in terms of signing young players than a team who potentially has a bunch of pitchers who they're going to have to just chalk up them missing one whole year because of Tommy John surgery.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a very good point. I don't think the Orioles will really shell out a lot of money on extensions for pitchers regardless. They have a certain amount, like they're willing to go on Burns, probably because of his track record of health and all of that. And there's a number they have in mind. So I do think that there is a willingness to spend. But like, if I'm sitting here thinking, if Holiday pans out to be just south of Gunnar or what Gunnar is, and Westberg keeps going the way he's going, and you sign two of those guys instead of Gunnar. I'm just trying to think out loud. Like, I didn't say that we shouldn't sign Gunnar. I'm saying as far as an extension right now for your fan base, it's not going to be Gunnar because there's no way that man is letting Gunnar sign an extension coming off of an injury and without putting up those MVP numbers again. So, and then obviously we've been hitting around like the Cowser injury. Colton Cowser, as John said, dove into first base. I'm not going to jump on the wagon of how dumb it was. I'm sure he's heard that. The man's trying to make a play for his team. Sometimes it pans out, sometimes it doesn't. Was it was it the smartest play? No. But he was trying to make a play for his team. He got hurt. He's out probably the next 2 months. That sucks. I was hoping for a big year from him. And again, he was my prediction of getting the contract extension. So that's kind of out the window. I don't know, Mike. I do think that you're right. I think 100% they should make a move for a Gunner. And if they don't, I think this fan base will not handle it very well.
No, I agree. But if you look at comps, right? You would have to say that Bobby Witt Jr. is a similar type player. If you asked baseball analysts, you asked 30 of them, at least 15 would say Bobby Witt Jr. is probably a better all-around player than Gunnar Henderson. So I would say his contract was 11 years, $288 million. And that was what? A year ago, maybe. So what does that look like? What does a Gunnar contract look like, right? It's north of that because of just inflation, number one. But you talk about Gunnar coming back from the injury. I think it's, when you talk about those intercostal kind of things, like I don't think it's like an earth-shattering arm injury or anything like to his lower body that's going to cost him a career. So I think it doesn't do any harm to give him a contract. But just to hint on that, just to kind of step to an aside, when Gunnar comes back, and hopefully he comes back tomorrow is what they're saying, right? We have to make a corresponding roster move, which would have been super interesting if Cowser didn't get hurt, right? Because if Cowser didn't get hurt, we'd have to maybe DFA somebody. And we maybe have to talk about, hey, is this the end of the line for Mateo or something like that? But because Cowser got hurt, I think the move will just be, Carlson, you came up for a couple of days. Carlson, see you later. You'll probably head back down for a couple of days. What do you guys think?
I would have guaranteed you it would have been Mateo, and I still think there is a chance it's Mateo. Mateo's that perfect player that you want around. I think the Orioles want around for like a playoff push where you can bring a guy in to steal a base in a pinch. He does hit lefties well. Again, we talked the last show. I do not want him in the lineup against right-handed pitching. He's a helpful player in that aspect. I actually think that if they do DFA him, he might not get claimed by anyone. So he might come right back and get put on the Norfolk roster. I don't know what you think, John.
That's what I had thought, was that Mateo could still be gone and that he was going to clear waivers, I think, and go, back to Norfolk, where I think maybe later in the season or something, as more teams' injuries pile up, there's a more of a market there for Mateo. But I think this time of year, there just isn't that much of a market for him. But, they could send Carlson back down too. I mean, one of the two, I think those are the only two options that I even could speculate on.
Right.
But I agree. Mateo was 100% going to be gone if Cowser hadn't gotten hurt.
Well, real quick, do you think there's any chance in the world that they send down a Jackson Holiday or Heston Kjerstad? Is there any possibility of that happening? Now, I don't think they should, but do you gentlemen think that that's an Oriole move potentially?
No, because they wouldn't have brought up Carlson. Like, Carlson started the year in AAA for a reason. Like, if that was the plan, then Kjerstad would have been down, or Jackson. I mean, the plan for Jackson Holiday is to play every day. I didn't, forgive me, I didn't see if he was in the lineup tonight against.
He was not. He was.
Westberg played second. Yeah.
Right. I think we're going to be just fine as far as that goes. And that's kind of why I'm leaning Carlson staying on the roster, because I'm wondering if they want the outfielder, if they want the ability to match up more, where the infield is kind of set with Gunnar coming in, because now you can still, if you want to sit sit Holiday, you can always still put Urias in, and then have on the other side, you still have Westberg that can play second or third. I'd rather him stay at third, and I'd rather Urias go to second. And I think they would rather have that. I don't know what Brandon Hyde would, for whatever reason, Urias wins a Gold Glove and he's stuck there at third all the time. But he's a much better second baseman than Westberg is if you look at the statistics. So I think the infield set. If it was me, I would roll the dice with Carlson. But
I think that's interesting, Jason, because I think the other thing, and the reason they're so enamored with Mateo, is they see him as like a super utility player. I think they think he can play in the outfield too. So, for example, if you're facing a tough lefty and you don't want to bat Cedric Mullins, maybe you play Mateo in center field. But I don't know that that's a great idea. I think the Mateo thing has kind of run its course. I mean, I love that he can steal bases, but if you got guys that can actually get on base, even if you have a backup shortstop like Soto or one of those guys down there who hit pretty well in spring training, at least those guys are getting on base at a 300 clip. Like, they're doing something for you. They'll play good defense. They'll steal a few bases. They're not going to steal as many as Mateo, but they give you more every day than a Mateo would give you, at least from my perspective.
Right. Yeah, no, I would agree. It'll be interesting to see what they do. And we should know sometime in the afternoon tomorrow at the latest. The other piece of news that's going around is out down there in Atlanta, or I guess for us, John, up there in Atlanta, that a big, dirty, lying cheater, Jerickson Profar. Man, I should have saw this one coming. I don't know what I was thinking. Like, I drafted him in fantasy league because I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I didn't want to, but I had to because I got desperate at where I was. But so a masking agent to keep. I mean, it makes perfect sense. Comes out of nowhere. But as far as I know, I mean, did he not just come out of nowhere, or those numbers were? I mean, he made an all-star team, Mike, right, last year. Like, had a terrific year, and then parlayed it with a decent contract. But something was up to me. Also, I should have paid attention to it, because none of these teams during the offseason seemed that interested in him either.
Yeah, I mean, with Jerickson Profar, like, my question is, do these clubs have an opportunity? Like, if a Profar shows that he is cheating like that, is there anything with their contract? Like, is there anything that goes along with that, Jason?
There could be. I think the Braves were looking into it as far as if there's any violations, and like if the insurance money could kick in based on something like that. The players union, I thought you were going to take that in a different direction. I thought you were going to say, can they get some sort of dive into like some medical reports or something? And I was about to say, I think the players union, baseball players union, is crazy. That ain't going to happen. But I mean, as far as that goes, I know I did read that the Braves were looking into potential ways out. I mean, John, what does that do? I mean, what does that do for you? The Braves had a lot of I was very high on the Braves, and it's not a good start to the season.
Well, it's not, and I look at this and I'm thinking, man, you're you struggle in your career. And then last year, you took off, and then now, how does that happen to somebody without like, an act of God or something? You go from a middle of the road at best player to last year going off for the Padres, and if you're not on something or you're not doing, it just doesn't surprise me, and it was some sort of women's fertility drug or something that it said that he was caught with. So I don't know. I just with the way they test now, it's just like there's no way that you're not going to get caught. And some of these guys just don't. I don't know. They don't care. They just hope that they get a Ryan Braun issue where they put the urine too long in the fridge or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's to me, it can definitely derail your team. It's like the Braves had high hopes, and then they bring this in, and
I think
that.
it's pretty brave of him to try that, but it was very, very bad decision. I mean, when does a career, I don't know, 245 hitter start batting 280, 295? Like all of a sudden, it's like, oh my goodness, something. So when there's smoke, there's fire. But Jason, I'm curious, like you said, I thought he would have a bigger market in the offseason, and he really didn't have a big market. I wonder if some teams got wind of that and had an idea of what was going on there. Do you think that's a possibility?
I actually just was wondering if that could have played into it, but I don't think so. I mean, all these teams are very tight-lipped. Like no agent's trying to screw another agent over. Like everybody's real quiet as far as that goes. I actually think it was his asking price. I think he thought, but I do think teams were like, wait a minute, something's not adding up here. Like reading the tea leaves here, it's just. And ironically enough, guess who his best friend is? His best friend is Fernando Tatis Jr.
Oh.
And he got popped for the same thing. So ironically enough, so I don't know. I hate to speculate on that and like what was what, but I mean it is a shame because it's like, I mean, it's a good he was one of the top players, prospects in all of baseball for a long time, and never really turned out into much. Okay, so what do you guys? I guess we should talk about these giant bowling pin torpedo bats that all these things going around. John, do you wanna kick us off on that or?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's a great thing. I mean, you bring in MIT. Why more teams haven't done this is beyond me. It's sort of like the whole Moneyball movie was fake. Like the whole thing was fake. But bringing in the math people to help your team win ball games. Why haven't more teams brought an MIT guy in to figure out? Okay, this is the maximum width of the bat that it can be. Here's the best way to provide the most spring without corking the bat, which I read an article that said corking doesn't really do anything, but that's besides the point. But why haven't more teams done this before now? That's my big question, because I would think, okay, get a smart physics guy, figure out, okay, make the bat wider here because 90% of home runs are hit in this area or whatever, and then go from there. And all these people who are complaining, I think they're just pissed that they didn't think about it first, and that the Yankees beat them to the punch.
Well, the Yankees didn't beat him to the punch. This has been actually a thing for like the last couple of years, from what I've heard, and different players have like messed around and like thought about doing it. The Orioles they've came out and said that they were well aware of the torpedo bats, and I guess none of the players have really jumped in on it. I guess what really gave it legs were the Yankees, and they designed it specifically for Volpe because he was struggling, and the way his swing is, it would be better if the meteor part of the bat was down in the middle. And I mean, Mike, I don't know what your opinion is, but I'm kind of old school in the thought of like a bat's supposed to be a certain way, maybe a little bigger barrel than others, like growing up. But I think that's the mindset of most Major League Baseball players. They don't want a huge change.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I've kind of heard both both ways with the bat. You get pitchers coming out being angry about it, and some hitters are endorsing it, some are not. I mean, they changed the handles, I think, a few years ago. Like they were messing around with the grips a bunch, like that hatchet kind of handle, and they tried that a lot. To me, I thought it was interesting to listen to Ben McDonald on the broadcast tonight. He was talking about how, if a pitcher throws a nasty like curveball or slider that breaks away from you, maybe you want the meteor part where it was before, like right. So it's on the end of the bat if you have to poke it out in the opposite way. But maybe if then you face a guy who has a nasty pitch, a screwball or something or a changeup that bites back inside, then you might want the torpedo bat because it's kind of more central on the bat, the meteor part of the bat. So it was interesting to think maybe that you might even circumstantially use different bats for different situations. So I hadn't even thought about it that far along the line, but I'm sure these guys are looking for any edge that they can find. Personally, I don't really have a problem with it as long as it's within the regulations that are existing in the rule book. But if they go beyond that, then I have an issue.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's like everything's perfectly legal. Major League Baseball's looked at it. They just look different, and they look like those big red wiffle ball bats. It's like that's what I feel like you're getting when you go up there. And, I mean, the best home run hitter, the most prolific home run hitter in the American League right now isn't even using it. Like Aaron Judge isn't one of the guys using it. So I don't know. I'm not so sure. A lot of times when, in like the case of Volpe and different things, when players are struggling or they're trying to figure something out, John, I do think that a lot of it's mental. So if you give them something different that you tell them, maybe they had a couple real good swings on it in the cages before the game and they use it, all of a sudden that's it. That's the end all be all. Baseball players, we're a very weird breed. We do things a certain way and then we never stop doing it.
Right. And remember, Jason, 90% of the game is always half mental. So, most of that is in his head. But, you'll see guys. I mean, I've had guys do that. They'll switch a bat, switch their stance up a little bit, do so well with it, and they just stick with it. There's no rhyme or reason to it actually improving your game. There's nothing that's making you all of a sudden a superhuman, but it's just, again, like you said, it's a mental thing. And I personally kind of sit with Aaron Judge that I don't think I would like the weight like in the middle. I'd rather have it, on the end and things like that. But, I think it's just, it is what it is, and it works. If it works within the rules, I don't have a problem with it. You got to figure out a way to beat it.
I do. I think Mike made an interesting point, though, based on what Ben McDonald said. I will be curious watching going forward how if they use the bat against certain pitchers, but not against other pitchers. To me, that would be very interesting how that would turn out. But
well, they mentioned something about breaking bats, that bat with somebody with a really like a Mariano Rivera type cutter, that bat wouldn't break in the same manner that a normal thin-handled, thick-barreled bat would.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Absolutely. The only other baseball thing I have right now is the historically awful start to the season by Rafael Devers. I guess that ended tonight. He got a double or something, but he was 0 for its first 21 with something like almost 13, 14 strikeouts. Is that right?
Yeah, he had 15 strikeouts. I saw a stat. Tony Gwynn had 586 at bats. I think it was like 1997. He had 15 strikeouts the entire season in over 500 at bats, and Devers had more strikeouts in his first 6 games of the season than Gwynn had in the entire season.
Yeah, and it's funny, but it's also very sad and kind of alarming too. I mean, Mike, he did have he had procedures done on his shoulders during the offseason in which he's recovering from. And if you look at his numbers, I mean, his bat speed is not up to par. Would you say that that's the cause of it? Or, I mean, is it still just getting back into spring, like extended spring training?
Yeah. I mean, I think your guess is as good as mine, Jason, but I mean, there is a mental side to this too, right? Because he was their everyday third baseman. I know he raised a little bit of a stink in the offseason when they signed Bregman, because he kind of was taking over his position. He wanted to assert his authority. But I think he's pretty much the everyday DH now. for the Red Sox. So I don't know if not playing the field. I know how you guys you can get that way, right? If you're not playing the field every day, it's kind of like, okay, I'm focusing everything I have into my at bats, and sometimes overthinking and things like that can cause an issue as a baseball player. I'm not saying that's the case, but that may be along, Jason, with what you're talking about, the recovery from the injury and things like that, or the surgery, I should say. That could be kind of a compilation of issues kind of rearing their head all at once. But I think he had 2 hits tonight, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe he's getting back on the horse. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, again, time will tell with that one, but I was, as far as I keep mentioning fantasy, but I mean, that was one of my stay away for players for all those reasons.
And Mike, I was just thinking the exact same thing because like I hated DHing because when you go up, you got that one shot and then you got 3 innings to think about what happened. Whereas, when I was catching or when I was playing third, you have to get that out of your head and you have to concentrate on your defense and things. So I think there is a big mental aspect behind, okay, first at bat you struck out. Well, then you got 3 innings to think about it with nothing else to do. And then you go to the next at bat and it's still in the back of your head and then you're slow. And then, it just kind of accumulates and just continues to roll down the hill and like that snowball. And I think that could be a huge issue with him. But, maybe the 2 hits today will help drive him in the right direction.
Yeah, we will see. Okay, Mike, I've mentioned fantasy a couple times. I just wanted to check in on you, buddy. See how things are going. How's the experience going? Are you you on the bridge still, or what?
Everything hurts, Jason. Everything hurts. We need to cue the REM song. The Everybody Hurts. I need that playing in the background. No, yeah, I don't know if of the 2 things that are going bad with my life right now, I'm not sure that the fact that I'm a dad and I'm like 40 years old and every time I move, I hurt something on my body, or it's my fantasy baseball team when every time I look, someone's striking out 3 times and no one's getting a hit. But like I went to get pizza for my family and I went to get carry out the other night and I got 2 pizza boxes and I went to put them in the back seat from the front seat. And I think I pulled like something like a lat muscle, or I just literally went like this to rotate my body. I know if you can't see me because you're listening to me, I twisted and I went to put the boxes in the back seat and I couldn't like move back. And then I played indoor soccer the other night and someone shot me in the leg. My calf all of a sudden started like seizing up. And I'm like, what is going on? And so anyway, and then I look at the fantasy baseball. And I'm playing Jason this week, and he's got like 90 points in one night. And my guys are like busy trying to find out maybe they need more of the torpedo bats. I'm not sure what's going on.
It could be. I mean, just to update the folks, I mean, it's currently 174 to 69. So, I mean, it's okay, Mike. I mean, it's good for you. One of my pitchers on my bench actually scored 35 points, so you have that going for you.
Well, I saw I have some guy who has 5 saves that I haven't played yet, so I'm doing a good job with that. So,
oh God. All right, well, hang in there, Mike. I mean, it's not it's a long season. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint, Mike. I don't think you do well at either, but I'm just
no. It feels like I'm trying to jog around the world right now. I don't know.
Hey, Mike, maybe you should consider taking up sports like softball or pickleball or things where you don't actually have to run as much or even sprint as much. That might save your ankles, your knees, your hamstrings, all those other body parts that hurt.
Yeah, but what about the pizza boxes? Am I just never supposed to eat pizza again?
There's DoorDash. There's delivery.
Okay.
Or you have Julie go grocery shopping. Remember, it's not delivery. It's DiGiorno.
Were you?
I don't have Julie do anything. First of all, so let's remember our words as spouses. Number 1, number 2. I would never pay for DoorDash in a million years. Like the whole idea behind paying someone to bring me food, maybe I'm just an old crotchety old man generation thing, but like I can't even imagine doing that.
Oh no, I'm 100% with you. Like we won't do it. Like if it's not, whenever we've done it, it's because there was like a free, like they don't charge you for it, so you just tip your driver thing. That was like the one time only that I ever agreed to do it. But I need to go back to John here. Hold the hell on. So are you still in like the 40s and the 50s here? Like your wife does all the cooking, the cleaning, the grocery shopping? Because I'm the one that does all the grocery shopping in my house.
No, my wife does the grocery shopping because I'll come home with like steak and lobster tail and stuff. And she's like, "That's not in the budget. Why?" Well, you sent me to the grocery store. That's what I like to eat.
So
So
you just do it so that you don't have to do it anymore. So
yeah, kind of. Or I just make a nice order in Instacart or actually Kroger is great for getting groceries here. They have like $25 off, or it'll be free delivery with so I'll just like get an order and just order the same stuff from like Instacart or Kroger and just have it brought here.
oh my gosh, John! Like for
Saves
someone
me
that
gas, time, you know.
okay, so let's do a quick little lesson. Instacart. What's the other thing we just talked about a minute ago? DoorDash. That's not how you build wealth, Jonathan. Okay, take a step back here, buddy. All right, we go to we get in our car and we go to the grocery store. We pick out the groceries, bring it home. Lobster and steak is okay, but not all the time. Okay, are we done for the intervention, Mike? Or
No. Like,
But
also, are we really at the stage of our life where we're still pretending we can't clean the toilet? Like, I think we do know how to use a toilet brush. It's just real simple, like a toothbrush for your toilet. So I'm just saying, I think that phase is going to pass quickly for you, John, and things are going to change probably at some point soon.
or
yeah,
spend a lot of time with a divorce attorney, one or the other.
yeah, see, I do most of the cooking in my house, so I have to make sure that I have some stuff that I'm good at cooking,
Well, soon you'll only have half of everything you own, so it'll be okay.
Okay. So I'll just go crash at Jason's house.
Nope, no room in the inn, buddy. I just took on 4 stragglers. I can't take any more. I got 2 dogs, a pregnant lady, and a large man. No more.
Did you grab an eagle
here, but no more room.
That's unfortunate.
All right. Well, we digress. For the love of God, we digress. Okay. So, this is like the frisky way of doing things. I'm going to do a pun. There's a buzz going on around Maryland, Mike.
Yes.
The University of Maryland has a big buzz going on. Would you like to kick that one off for us?
I think every article I've read has used that, and every time I still smile, but that's okay. No, let's University of Maryland introduced Buzz Williams as their new head men's basketball coach today. Was it today or yesterday?
I think it was today.
I think it was today. But it was interesting what he had to say in his press conference. He shook hands with Gary. He talked about building team, and it was all about everything he said was about kind of team, which I like the talk. And I think he tried to avoid throwing shade at Willard for the most part. And I think he did a good job of kind of avoiding that subject matter. But he did talk to the fact that integrity is a big part of what he does, and that's what he's going to bring to the program. So I don't know if that was kind of a backhanded way to kind of say the same exact thing. I know we talked, Jason, off air about our feelings about Buzz Williams, but why don't you share what your thoughts are, and then we can kind of have a discussion here.
Yeah, I had to take a step back from all of this because my initial reaction was great. Okay, just another guy. Like, yeah, I think what I actually said to you was he's fine. He's fine.
Yeah.
However, since then, I've dug more into it and just thought more about what the program itself needs right now and what type of person he is. And I do want to read something real quick too. One of my advisors from college is originally from Texas A&M, like College Station area. And he's a huge A&M fan. and he was my advisor. He's the head of kinesiology at Shenandoah University. And I reached out to him and I just said, hey, how should we feel about Buzz Williams being the new Terps coach? And he wrote back, he's a great coach. He's a lot like, well, I'm not a very smart guy, but I know these guys got it. Or I'm just an old coach type vibe. And he said he's very down to earth, but he can really coach. He goes, I'm really upset we lost. I'm good for you guys. So that's a diehard, lifelong Texas A&M guy who's also been the assistant coach on lower level Division III basketball teams and high school teams. So for somebody like that to say that, and then we have a mutual friend, Mike, our friend Jeremy Fritz, and when it comes to basketball, I really take his opinion to heart, and he really was like, no, he's a really good coach. So maybe I just misjudged the whole thing at first, but I'm starting to come around with the idea of, I think that's what the program needed, and maybe that's the right move.
Yeah, I was excited initially. I just think we talked about on our last podcast the fact that they needed to do something quickly. And there were two things that made me happy about this. Number one is he wanted to be here. You got a guy who wants to be here. And not only does he want to be here, this is a guy who's coached in the ACC and the SEC and the Big East. And he wants to be here in the Big Ten with Maryland. So it's not just some Joe Schmo who wants to be here. And then second, he has a track record of kind of being a family man and a man of pretty high integrity, which I do appreciate, especially coming from that snake Kevin Willard who just left. I feel like it's a nice kind of turn in the right direction for Maryland basketball. And I think you said, if you're happy with 20 wins a year, this might be your guy, or 20 to 22 wins a year. Well, I think sometimes we inflate what the view of what Maryland basketball is. Like, they had that national championship run for a couple years, and I think that wasn't the norm. That was something that was extraordinary. So for us to think that we are that now is kind of a little bit out of sorts for us. Is it something that we'd like to be? Yes, we'd love to be Duke, but we aren't right now. So for us to be something that matters year after year, a program that matters, that's on the NCAA basketball map year after year, we have to have somebody who is consistent and who has a track record of winning, which is who we have in Buzz Williams moving forward. That's not to say that he can't do more than that here in Maryland, maybe with some more resources and a great hotbed for recruiting. I'm just saying maybe the floor is higher with him than with somebody else, Jason, like you might have been talking about a younger coach that we got, that maybe an up-and-coming guy.
Right. And you never want to make a hire just like when you're panicking, because you have to move quickly. I do think, though, like thinking of who they could have brought in, I mean, when we talked last week, there wasn't one guy on there. Like, I made myself want to like Porter Moser or somebody like that, or I was open to the idea of Dwayne Simpkins or something like that. Although those guys aren't ready for this yet. I do think that it was the right decision now looking back on it. John, you were kind of underwhelmed by it as well. I mean, has your mind changed on it at all?
A little bit. I mean, I think for the situation that we're in, it wasn't like when we knew Gary was going to retire. It wasn't like some of these other situations where, they're going to leave or you're going to fire them, so you're already looking. We were all kind of, I think, blindsided by this. And I saw Buzz coach at Marquette, a number of times when he was younger. And it seems, the thing that I'm hoping he does is that he brings on a Maryland person for his staff. Like I talked about the other day, like as Steve Blake had mentioned, he was very interested in coming on the coaching staff at Maryland. And whether that was just an X thing, or if that was an actual, thing he wants to do, is another story. But, if he could bring on a Maryland guy or some people who are just good recruiters that we could get two queens, get, a couple more high level players in here to actually start building something, that would really change my mind and really, I think, cement him as where we are. But I think, like you said, Jason, as I did a little more research and things, out of a bad situation, I think this is the best that we're going to get. And you know what? We're going to have to just roll with it and keep our fingers crossed and see what he can do.
Mike, and it seems to me that the national guys seem to like this move too.
Yeah, his track record, I think. Virginia Tech wasn't a really highly touted college basketball school, and he managed to get them, deep in the tournament at least once or twice. And when I say deep, a couple wins deep. And I think, Texas A&M, up and down, more mainly a football school, right? But and Marquette, I think he kind of helped put them on the map as a basketball school. So, more or less, his track record speaks for itself. He's not a name that people are unfamiliar with in the national scene. So the fact that he's willing to move from an SEC where they had a dominant regular season in the SEC to a Big Ten school, I think it speaks volumes for the fact that he thinks Maryland is a sleeping giant, I hope.
Yeah, and a lot of coaches have said that in the past. I know even Turgeon and Willard, when they came in, both said like the program should be at a much higher level. I mean, a lot of credit to that to Gary for building it up to that point. The one thing I will say, and I mean, we've had discussions here, and then a couple of friends as well that have came out and said I would rather coach at many other places before coaching in Maryland. My question would be, I think it's actually not a question. It's a statement and a question, but my statement would be Maryland's done that to themselves. They put themselves in the financial situation where they have to work from behind on everything. But then also don't let them fool you. That university is making a ton of money through, and they have a lot of it to give in NIL, but they're splitting it with football. So, and a lot of it's going to football. And to me, it's very frustrating because they're never going to, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, they're never winning a national championship in football, but they could win one in basketball. And that's the frustrating part because we put these resources down. And that's why Villanova went ahead and got Willard, because they have a lot of money and it all goes to basketball. So as long as that's the case, Mike, I don't know if these guys are going to be fighting this uphill battle or not.
No, I had the same thought, Jason, when we jumped ship to the Big Ten. It was a big old money grab. They wanted to make football a bigger entity than it was. They had a nice little run when they made that Orange Bowl in the early 2000s with the Maryland football team. They put the Terps script on the helmets there for a while, and Sean Hill and some of those guys had some good seasons. But like you said, Jason, I have a hard time imagining a Maryland football team that's going to compete with Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State on a yearly basis and beat all of those schools and then go ahead and beat someone probably from the SEC to win a national championship. I just don't ever see it happening. We have a hard enough time in basketball competing at the level we're at now, and we've won a national championship before. So I would tend to agree with you, Jay. Unfortunately, I think that Maryland is really looking for, I don't know if you say unfortunately, but for me and for our basketball program, they are looking for a more balanced approach to their athletic department, which then leaves you with the issue that Willard had with the basketball program. They weren't putting enough money to compete at the highest level into their men's basketball program, which was what he wanted from Villanova.
Yeah, and I mean, Willard got it. I don't really have anything else to say about that scumbucket. But John, is there anything else you want to say on Buzz and how you feel?
No, I don't think so. I think what we've talked about just in our conversations almost daily. It's that competing in the Big Ten in football, like you look at a school like Minnesota. Minnesota's brought in 2 high quality football coaches and still can't compete. They still every year they try to bring in players, coaches, everything, and they can't compete because Ohio State, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Iowa run the show. And Maryland just kind of needs to accept that fact that they're not going to be that they'll be in for the money, but that if they want to win on anything other than lacrosse, it's got to be basketball. And they got to put all their coins in that bucket and, sail with that ship.
Yeah, and I got to say, it really is kind of impressive how quickly this all transpired and to still be able to get a quality coach like this. I mean, somebody with that many wins and that name, I mean, the more I research it, that name is relevant to the kids. And I mean, I'm sure he has a plan to bring kids in here and start competing right away. So, all right. Well, I'm on the buzz bus. Is that what we're calling it?
The Willard loss stings, but we got a buzz now from Mr. Williams joining the basketball program.
And you know what? We're light years ahead of where we were.
Yes.
Oh no. So terrible.
Maybe you do have a shot at this whole dad thing, John. I think you got it.
Oh my goodness.
I just got that. I just thought of that one right at the top of my head. I didn't even ask Chat GPT. Now that was good.
Oh gosh, what is this chat? Okay, I'm old. All right. Okay. So are we finally gonna go ahead and discuss the Ravens player group, or are we pushing that off for another week? I mean, what are we doing? You guys want to do it?
You wanted to talk about wide receivers, Jason, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty simple at the moment. You have Rashad Bateman, you've got Zay Flowers, you've got D Hop in the fold, right? You got Tylon coming back, Tylon. So you've got those guys. You got Devontae Walker, who was a rookie last year. And then you got a couple no-name guys that are actually on the roster, but aren't. I think there's a guy Wade who they drafted last year. A couple guys are on the roster. Like that. Yeah, Anthony Miller might still be there. So you got some other guys hanging around, right? But I guess the big question is, do they draft somebody? Are they done in free agency? What are your guys' thoughts?
John?
I think that they're pretty well set with what they have. I think Hopkins is enough of an upgrade over Aguilar that I think, you know what, they're gonna be pretty well set. You know, they got other pressing needs, but again, like we always talk about, Ravens draft the best available player, and if it happens to be a wide receiver, you know, they might go with it. But you know, the Ravens have that special thing, the special players on their team where they have two tight ends who, you know, more or less are another wide receivers, you know, with the way Likely plays and things. So when you put that into perspective, I think the D Hop, like I said, D Hop is a huge upgrade, even from just a leadership and an experience standpoint. I think he's just going to be huge for that entire room.
Yeah, I wouldn't actually count out them bringing Nelson Aguilar back. If he is he's still a free agent, correct? He hasn't signed anywhere. I mean, familiarity. Yes. Yeah. I mean, that wouldn't surprise me at all. They really like him there. Obviously it'd be for a much more reduced role and less money. But that would be barring any sort of injuries to the current guys. I mean, I think as far as, again, barring any injuries, they will be sticking with what they have, but I do think they'll take at least one, if not more than one receiver in the draft. Probably not super high, but to me, it could be anywhere from rounds 2 to the end of the draft. If there's somebody sitting there that they like. But no, I mean, I grade this group pretty high. I mean, it's the same group as last year, which was very impressive. And now they add DeAndre Hopkins, who doesn't, for the amount of money they brought him in for and what they can get from him, it's just all gravy, Mike.
So let me ask you this, Jason. If Bateman didn't have the year he had last year, if he was the Bateman from 2 years ago, how would you feel about this receiver group?
They would be having to they would have signed somebody else a little more impactful, or they would have had to draft or plan on drafting someone relatively high.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think the fact that Bateman finally responded with the season that we expected from him, I think now they have high expectations for him and Zay Flowers together on the field. I wouldn't be surprised if they would draft a wide receiver anywhere in the draft, honestly. I think that's the way the Ravens operate if they're the best player available at that point. they've been linked to, I think, Matthew Golden from Texas a little bit. He might be a mid-first round receiver, talented player. He can beat press coverage, impressive footwork. He also has some kick return ability. I think that would be – I'd be curious to see if we bring in somebody like that who could do something else, whether it's special teams, gunner, or like returning kicks. So, and just get a little bit younger at that position. I know Tez Walker did that for them, but maybe I think Tez is a taller, leaner guy, but maybe somebody who's a quicker, short, bursty kind of guy that could do that kind of thing. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think just you can always upgrade in the draft, and giving Lamar those weapons just makes this offense even more deadly. And you can't complain about that. You get a little bit more speed out there than, if you get two guys with Zay Flowers type speed and quickness, speed. I don't know. You guys have been around longer. Speed and quickness are two different things, correct?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think a quickness is side to side sometimes, like agility almost.
Yeah. And Zay has kind of both of those things where some of these guys don't. But I think if the right guys there, I think it could improve us. But, even if they bring Aguilar back, that's still another veteran who, keeps our room fresh and keeps it, in line. And I think that's always something that seems like me with the Ravens is that there's not a ton of like internal issues, because it always seems like we bring in guys who, fit the culture, fit in our locker room, and don't cause a bunch of problems.
I mean, there was that Deontay Johnson situation last year. I mean, they handled it pretty quickly. The more I read about that, just side note, is it seemed like it was a situation between the coaching staff and him. I mean, the players seemed to really like him. But the only other thing I wanted to say really about this group is that if you watch towards the end of the season, and a lot of it had to do with Zay Flowers getting hurt towards the end, but they started working Des Walker in a little more. I'm wondering what type of plans they have for him. Mike, I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but it's when they took him, I mean, he's obviously has some intangibles that could really help them out.
Yeah, I like his size with his speed combination. I think they see him as an X receiver. I wonder if you don't see, as the course of the season goes along, you see him worked in more and more, maybe even over D-Hop once in a while. I think he's probably the next guy up, but they have to find out what they have in him over the next year or two to know whether or not they need to go looking somewhere else, because they have to sign Zay long term. The Bateman deal was a good one for a few years, but at some point those guys are going to be coming up, so they need to know what they have behind him. So I'm curious, Jason, too, what they do with him this year, but I think they find ways to get him on the field.
Yeah, I mean, and overall, I would say that just to state again, I do think that this group is good. I don't think it's the best receiving group in football, but I think it is. I mean, that's not the reason why they lost to the Bills. And I mean, this receiving core, I mean, barring everyone staying healthy, could get them in that position this year.
I have a question for you, Jason. And I was kind of listening to some sports talk today, and they were talking about the John Harbaugh extension. I was looking to listen to one of the Ravens podcasts, and they were talking about whether or not he deserved the extension based on the fact that they can't get over the hump in the playoffs. And they were kind of talking about how does it lie in John Harbaugh's hands, these losses in the playoffs, because he's not finding the right buttons to push or not doing the right things to get these guys motivated and ready in their circumstances or situations. How do you gentlemen feel about that?
John?
I have thought a lot of these things have fallen on Harbaugh. For a while, I've thought, you know what? The two Baltimore teams need new management, new coaches, both the Orioles and the Ravens. I've thought, Harbaugh, we may need a coach who's a little more, I don't know, more like strict, energetic, and kind of out there. But then he always seems to pull something out of his hat. So, and my question for you guys is this, is that NFL coaches, do head coaches actually pull a ton of strings, or are they relying almost 100% on their coordinators and things like that?
Well, to answer that question real quick, and then I'll answer Mike's as well. But it all depends on the coach. Like Andy Reid is a hands-on offensive guru who's going to still like call the majority of the plays. Mike McDonald is a hands-on defensive guru who's going to call the defensive plays. John Harbaugh is a older school coach. Like if you look back, like Parcells, the rest of those guys, Bill Cowher comes to mind.
Sean Payton.
Yep, Sean. Well, I was going to say Jimmy Johnson too, where it's like he is letting his coordinators, delegating to his coordinators to make those decisions. I think he's been doing that from day one. He hasn't changed that. He's not Brian Billick, who came in, decided that he's going to fire Jim Fossil and then start calling the plays on his own. Which again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not John Harbaugh, and nothing has changed the way that he handles his coordinators from day one. I mean, how do you feel, Mike?
No, I think there's something to be said about team culture when you talk about a head coach. No matter whether or not they pull the strings on the X's and O's, they do establish what is acceptable and unacceptable in the locker room and as far as conduct for the team. And I think that's where Harbaugh has a very strong leadership role. And I think he does a really nice job. And part of that's just my personal feelings. I really like the guy. He's a Christian guy. He's an FCA guy. I think he has high expectations of his players. He wants certain types of players in the building. I don't think he's up for just anybody. But he also delegates, like Jason said. He wants to let the offensive guys run the offense and the defensive guys run the defense. And his background is special teams, obviously. I don't know how much input he has there, but I feel like that's his model. And you know what? We ask our owners to let the baseball people run the baseball operations when it comes to the Orioles, right? So why aren't we asking our guys who are in the trenches to do the same thing and just delegate down the same way sometimes? Now, if he had an expertise in a specific area, I'm sure he would have some input more so than not. And maybe he has more input than we think he does. I don't know. But from an outsider's perspective, to answer your question, John, it's more about culture than anything else.
And I think to go back to your question, Mike, to blame Harbaugh for all the playoff losses and whatnot is it's a targeted, lazy answer. It's easy. Let's just blame the coach. Coaches lose, players win games, right? That's a bunch of crap. So John Harbaugh in the Buffalo game, he's not the one that dropped the two passes. Dropped the one pass and fumbled the ball. Now, if you want to rewind to Kansas City, the year before, not getting up someone's ass and telling them that we need to run the football and we need to do this and we need to do that to our coordinators. Well, that's on him. So he does have the capabilities of making those changes. So it comes down to I think he deserves the extension. He deserves to be here in Baltimore. But I listen to the same podcast that you do, Mike, and I do agree with them that this could be the year for him. If he doesn't get to a certain point, or if they fail to make it out of the first round of the playoffs, or I don't think if he makes it to the AFC Championship and loses, he should get fired unless he does something really dumb and it's all his fault, like some challenge or waste timeouts or clock management, whatever. I don't think that it's Super Bowl or bust and he loses his job. I'm not on that wagon.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear the press conference with him or it might have been an interview with him and Bisciotti together. And they were asking them about the trajectory of the future of the franchise and how are they excited now as they were teaming up again. And both of them were talking, we want to win next year. We don't care about the trajectory. And so to me, that's not that it's a hidden way of saying it, but like your seat's hot, John. Like, don't get comfortable. That's kind of what I read into that too, is like the owner wants to win. He's not getting any younger. He wants to see a Super Bowl championship. So, and I think John wants that too. And he's as frustrated as anybody else because Lamar hasn't won one. And I think it's a matter of time before Lamar does win one, but it's only more frustrating every single year he doesn't. And you could feel that frustration from the owner. You feel it from the head coach. You feel it from the fan base. And I think that's where our biggest frustration lies is we have that quarterback that all the other teams are looking for. And at some point, we're just looking to break through.
I mean, obviously Lamar's taking his own criticism, but I mean, to me, he doesn't seem to play very well in the big moments either, for whatever reason. I mean, there's something too. It's like how you redeem yourself, and it usually happens within games. Every time Lamar was bringing him back against Kansas City, and then Zay fumbles the ball at the goal line. Lamar's bringing him down to score, take the lead, 2-point conversion. Mark Andrews drops the ball. So it's like you have your chances of redemption. But if he plays better right out the gate, usually Lamar's mistakes come from the same thing that I said about Cowser earlier, trying to make a play to help your team. And sometimes making those plays, you either hurt yourself or you hurt your team sometimes.
And, we blamed, not we as in the three of us, but like we as a Ravens fan base, they blamed Greg Roman for the previous playoff losses, like in 2019 and things like that, and so it's like, how far can you go blaming the coordinator for not running the ball, not doing this, that, and the other? And then how much of it then do you blame on Lamar's shoulders for not, being Lamar in the playoffs and being, Baker Mayfield in the playoffs?
No, I get it.
The frustrating thing as a fan, and I'm sure for the organization, is like all it takes is one for Lamar, right? As soon as he gets the one, like it's just the pressure that builds from not getting the one. If he got one in his first or second year, maybe that 2019 season, we beat the Titans and we get through the playoffs and we win a Super Bowl, he might be the next Pat Mahomes. He might win 3 or 4. It's just the frustration that comes when he has all that ability and just can't break through. And it makes it even harder because it's more pressure to win under than, let's say, a Mahomes who has a few Super Bowl championships. Every year is a lot easier for him than it is for Lamar.
I mean, it took John Elway his entire career to win Super Bowl, and then he won 2 in a row. Peyton, I mean, it took Peyton his forever, and he got the same criticism. Can't win the Super Bowl, can't blah, blah, blah. And he goes down as one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks of all time. So, I mean, time will tell. I mean, just to wrap this puppy up here with the position group. I mean, we've worked our way through a good amount here. I think we do have to discuss going forward here, boys. We could maybe do some more position groups, but in the next coming weeks, we'll have to do some draft prep as well for everybody. See who the Ravens and the rest of the NFL will be taking. But as far as this show goes right now, I mean, are you guys prepared for the blast for the past?
Absolutely. I'm going to stump you this time, Jason.
Well, you stumped me last week for the majority of it until the end. Okay, so blast from the past, just a quick reminder, is where we play a little trivia game amongst the 3 of us. Please feel free to play at home as well, where we try to guess a player that played for the Orioles that we may or may not have remembered. They may or may not have had a huge impact on the team, but that is what our blast for the past segment is. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first this time.
Okay.
All right. So this individual was drafted in the first round by the Cleveland Indians in 1994, 10th overall. Played for the Indians, Padres, Braves, Yankees, and the Orioles. He played for the Orioles in 2007. He was a starting pitcher. He had a career.
Jarrett Wright.
Yep.
Mike?
How did you do that?
I mean, it just set up for it.
Did it feel right?
It did.
I had some interesting.
I would like to see you on Name That Tune. I can name that tune.
Maybe I should have guessed it that tune. Maybe I should have let him finish so that people could have got some more clues. I don't know.
He's the youngest World Series starter of all time.
Yeah. It was a 95 Cleveland team, wasn't it?
Yep, 95 Cleveland team.
Year after he's
He
drafted. Holy
he
crap.
signed a huge contract with the Yankees in 2005. 3 years, 21 million, and barely pitched.
Yeah.
And he only played for the Orioles for like 21 days or something.
Wasn't that a trade, Mike? Didn't we get him in a trade from them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got him. The Orioles got him in a trade for Chris Britton and cash considerations. But the Orioles only paid $3 million of the $7 million on his contract. So now he's the pitching coach for the Windy City Thunderbolts of the Frontier League.
Oh, nice. Very good. Mike, are you prepared, or do you need me to go? What do you want to do here?
I'll go. All right, my feller was born December 28th, 1952.
Oh man,
he's an old guy.
that was the year my father
played. He played 13 seasons in Major League Baseball, but only one season in 1987 with the Baltimore Orioles. He mainly played third base, but he played some DH and first base. He was drafted by the Cincinnati Reds in the 10th round of the 1970 MLB amateur draft. He has 84 career home runs, a 271 career average. He played for the Reds, Astros, Mets, Orioles, and Tigers. He also won a World Series. And that World Series title, I believe, was 1986.
with the Mets.
I'm sorry, let me check real quick.
I mean, I think I know your answer.
Yes,
it was 1986 is the Mets. Yes,
Ray Knight.
Ray Knight.
Yeah, that's him.
Woo! I forgot he was an
You're
Oriole.
on fire.
Dang.
Knight and Wright. Do we have another Ite? Do we have another something rhymes with Ite?
No.
Smite.
No.
Smite.
Bite.
Okay.
Bright.
My feller is a left-handed pitcher. He was born in Honolulu, Hawaii. And let's see. He pitched for 17 years. He's a starting pitcher, a two-time All-Star for the Mets. And he pitched for the Dodgers, the Mets, the Orioles, the Phillies, and the Astros. He pitched for the Orioles in 1994 and part of 1995. He was not very good for the Orioles, but he won 114 games. He was 114 and 96. And it's that lifetime ERA of 3.36. So a pretty good pitcher. And he does have a unique nickname that if I give you, you will probably guess it right away.
Say those teams again, Jason. When did he break into the league?
In 1983 with the Dodgers.
1983 with the Dodgers.
Yep, but then he played from 84 to 93 with the Mets. Left-handed starting pitcher. And then he played again with the Orioles in 94 and 95. He's very frustrating to watch, Mike. He had, let's see, just to give you some Orioles numbers, if that's what you want to call them. They're not very fun. Doc, you wasn't an Oriole?
No, I didn't say.
Good.
No, I was speaking to myself. It's not.
He can't be Hawaiian.
No one else can hear you, John.
I thought I hit mute.
He had a 5.15 ERA in 1994 with the Orioles. He was 6-6. Yeah. He was 0-4 in 1995 with a 7.39.
And did they DFA him?
I think they took him out back and shot him, actually. It wasn't good. I remember this guy was so frustrating.
Was that the same night that the lights didn't work so Cal Street could stay alive? They went and shot him behind the building.
That's so funny. Okay, so I give you part of his nickname. I can't give you the whole thing, but part of the nickname is L. It starts with L. Like the in Spanish, L.
That could be
El,
anything. El what?
El
Come on.
Capitan.
Okay, it's El Cid. Oh my God, you guys don't remember him?
Franco? Wait, no,
No, we already no.
it can't be John.
You guys are killing
No,
me.
it's not. It's
You guys are
not
hurting
John
my
Franco.
heart.
John Franco was a closer.
Yeah,
And not an Oriole.
No.
no, I didn't think so. I was trying to piece the. I can't remember the Mets very well. I remember Darryl Strawberry played there. I remember Doc Gooden played there.
Yeah, I mean, he won a World Series with them in '86. He was an All-Star that year too. He was 16-6. He might have been their ace besides Doc. Was Doc in the '86? Yeah, he was.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a good match. Do you want me to tell you? You need something else? Like me to tell you his wife and kid
Sid.
names? Okay.
The
Sid
Sid.
Fernandez, fellas. Sid
Fernandez. Yes.
Fernandez.
Yes.
Oh my God. How did I miss that?
That's who I was picturing when I said Franco, but that's who I was picturing. But yes, well done.
Once again, I'm victorious. I am the king of the
Yeah.
world. All
So we
You
need somebody. We need like somebody to keep track of this to see.
I'm keeping
No, we
track.
don't. Why do we need to keep track of this? It's pretty easy. We don't get it, and Jason does.
Mike, Jason's older than both of us, so with elder statesman comes wiseness and.
I just think for
better
me, it's a
memory.
name thing. I have to memorize the names of like 200 children every year, and I don't have any room left in my teeny tiny brain.
I got you.
Great. All right.
You know what? I'm just gonna say the same name from now on, and then eventually it'll be right.
Leo Gomez.
Jesse Orozco.
That's here. You already guessed that one.
He was a Met. Yeah, there you go. There's
He was on that
right?
team too, though.
Right? Yeah, Jesse Orozco's on that team too. Man, to be in that clubhouse, that would have been a crazy.
I want to try to land this plane. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, please do before it crashes into the ocean.
That's going to wrap it up for this episode of Dad Bods, Crab Cakes, and Sports. Thanks for hanging out with us this evening. Don't forget to subscribe on Red Circle, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're at it, leave us a review. It really helps us out. We're trying to spread the good word about Baltimore sports far and wide. Be sure to follow us on social media for more behind-the-scenes action, memes, and bad sports takes. You can find us at dadbods_crabcakes_sports on Instagram and at dadbods crab cakes and sports on our Facebook page. Have a question or topic you want us to cover? Please hit us up at dadbodscrabcakesandsports@gmail.com. You never know, we might just shout you out on our next episode. Until next time, keep rocking those dad bods, eating those crab cakes, avoiding those injuries, and never missing the game.
Adios.